Hello, I'm really excited today about talking to you. I want to do a little presentation. I've been talking about the upcoming in-person workshop I'm going to be having, and I've been doing a little different type of recording, and today I'm going to try doing this through a Zoom recording. And so I have a friend here on board. John, say hi.
Hello, how you doing?
Okay. And I'm going to be going through a little PowerPoint presentation, and it's going to tell you a little bit about how I became a painter, especially how I fell in love with art, and how I'm a little schizophrenic, you might say, with my taste in art. So anyway, let's begin with the story. I'm going to share my screen with you. There we go. Share the screen. And that means we got to close that. Okay, and we'll shrink this down. And we're going to look at a slideshow. And so it begins when I was a little girl. That's me, Judith Reidy. I went to the art museum, the Calatrava, which that is now called the Calatrava, but at that time it was just called the Milwaukee Art Museum. And as you can see here, I have a rendition of myself when I was a little girl, maybe 8 or 10, and I was at the museum and I saw this painting that was probably 70 inches tall and not quite that wide, but pretty big, and I was way down at the base of the painting. So here was the painting that I saw. It's called The Wood Gatherer. And I swear, I just stared at that painting it seemed like an eternity. And what was interesting to me is when I first came across the room, you could see all the woods and the leaves and the trees and everything. And it seemed so vivid and alive. And then when I got close to the painting, at the base of the painting, because I was only about this tall back then, I saw these like dabs of paint, just little dabs of paint here, there, and everywhere. And it was just amazing to me how beautiful the paint was and how they all came together and made this painting. And I just would stare at it and stare at it. And then, but you see it here and it all looks so perfect, like a photograph. But really, when you get close up, it wasn't like that at all, especially when you were looking at the foliage and the grass. But you know what was the most interesting thing is then I would look at her dress and her face and just I thought, oh, she just seems so happy and her hair is just bouncing in the air and she's so full of life and joy and she's enjoying the woods. But then I looked at this man with her, this old man who was carrying the wood gatherer, and he seemed tired and worn, and he was just looking forward to getting home. And the contrast of the two made a deep impression on me as a little girl. I went home and I just thought about that painting and I just thought about it. Well, anyway, I still had other paintings I was thinking about, so I went to my next room, the gallery, and there was another painting that was even taller. It was like 80 inches, but not quite as wide. And it like, whoa, when I saw it, I was just tiny and it was huge. And that was the painting. It seemed so mysterious. Now, this is by a Spanish artist. I didn't know that at the time. His name is Zurbarán. And when he painted, this is the tomb, I believe, of Saint Francis of Assisi. And it just seemed to me almost magical and mystical. And there was something ethereal. I didn't know that word ethereal back then, but it captivated me, even though it was very different than the previous painting. It was very somber. The other painting had an aspect of somberness, but this one was really somber and ethereal. Anyway, I really thought about this painting a lot, and I thought about how the simple shapes just seemed to make this story so strong. Anyway, I then went to another room, and this room, that was a smaller painting. But I like this one. It just was crazy wild. It was by an artist named Wassily Kandinsky, a Russian artist. And I just was amazed by all the energy in this painting. And the lines and the colors. And like it went from red, orange to yellow. And then it had this black and these lines. You could just follow it. It just flowed and went everywhere. And it didn't, I could see arrows and maybe an eye. I wasn't sure what the things were, but they all just had so much excitement in them. And I just liked them all. I liked that painting a lot. And I've always liked this painting, and I still like this painting. And then later, when I went to the university and I was studying there, I met people who had very distinct ideas about what kind of paintings they liked. They liked this kind, or they liked the other, or they didn't like it, and they didn't like the ones that were religious. But, I still liked them all. And I kind of didn't know where I fit in. I didn't know what I should do. Does it really make sense to love all these paintings at the same time? I mean, really, you've got Jules Bastien-Lepage, a Frenchman who lived from 1848 to 1884, and he painted The Wood Gatherer. And then you had Zurbarán, who painted and lived in the 1500s, painting Saint Francis of Assisi at his tomb. And then you have Wassily Kandinsky, the Russian, who lived from 1866 to 1944. This painting was done in 1913, and he named it Fragment for One Composition, for composition number 7. Anyway, I thought, when I was thinking, what am I going to paint? I thought, I like this, I like this, I like that. I just like so much. Anyway, then there was another artist I really liked. Now, I'm hoping when I click on this link that this is going to work. But if it doesn't, we will come back to this. Let's see if it comes back. But I liked Rembrandt, and I didn't see him till later. But he really fascinated me because I loved the way he did his portraits. I loved the eyes in his portraits and the way, especially as he got older. Now let's see, this didn't come up quite the way I wanted it, so let's see if I can find this. Oh, this is good. Now look at the man's eyes here. Look at him in here in his face. He's kind of like the woodcutter. Let me see if I can uncover this here so you can see it. Like the wood gatherer. He's like burdened. He has so many things he's thinking about. And you can see that in the face of these portraits. And can I tell you something about him? He wasn't as popular as other portrait artists at the time. One of the reasons, and these are mostly self-portraits, though he did do commissioned portraits, his portraits weren't about just the outside of a person. They were about their heart, their soul. They were about the burdens they were carrying. They were more psychological. And that made an impression on me. I remember the first time I saw them, I could just feel the person's emotion that I was feeling from that painting. Now I'm going to go back to the slide presentation. I'm going to move my portrait. And this portrait is a sketch that I did of my mother maybe 10 years ago. And she was very much declining in age. And what I saw in this drawing, was her fragility, her becoming more fragile as she aged. And I really, she had a sweetness about her, and was always full of joy in life. But she was ready. She was ready to go on, and it was hard to watch her. But I think I really captured that in this drawing of her. Now I have another one, and this one, this is a pen and ink drawing, and it too shows the emotion of and the weariness of getting old. And it's not something that people like to think about. And actually, my sister, who is a sweetheart, and I love her to death, she says, "Oh, Judith, I don't know. This isn't Mom." And I says, "No, it's a stage in Mom's life." And I really treasure these drawings. I will never sell these. Anyway, my mother had, and I like to walk sometimes over at my sister's house up in Wapaka in northern Wisconsin, when my sister lived there with her family. And my mother passed in November, and we had then our Thanksgiving dinner at my sister's house, and we all went for a walk in the woods, and I got this photograph. Now, I realized when I did this that I put the painting, I cut it in half, but I didn't really care. When I did it, I just felt really, this was like the last time we really were together in the way we were. And this was a place my mom and I and my sister would be together. And so I called this painting, my mother's name was Esther, I called this Esther's Sunset. But I really like certain things about it. The icy cold, the warmth of the sun setting on an early winter day. And I really thought it was fitting. So that's another painting I'm never going to get rid of. So now this one was also done at a very similar time of year, but a few years later. And it was called Just Before Winter. And it is a scene, and this one's done in pastel. And, you're thinking probably, she does all these sad paintings and they all have sad themes. I actually am starting to realize when I'm thinking, what do I want to paint? What do I paint? What do I want to talk about? What's important to me? And I'm starting to think about that. And so anyway, this was another one, Just Before Winter. It's a pastel. The previous one was an oil. This is actually a sunrise painting, but you almost have the feeling it's a sunset painting, a sunrise in Galveston, Texas. And it has sort of a solemnity to it as well that I guess I'm really attracted to that.